I'm going to ask the panel, I'll start with Gail just to my right, and we might just go around the panel. Just to introduce yourselves, a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe what you can offer the audience.
Gail Kerr, as Peter said. In Access, I guess, you know, the group that we work with are as diverse as the kind of jobs they want and the kind of employers and industries that we need to target. And I think the approach that we take is really to understand who are those group of people. What are their goals and aspirations, not actually deciding for somebody, or you'd be good here, you know, imposing and deciding people's lives. So really taking people through that process of understanding their goals and desires, and then, you know, really then understanding that industry and that job and trying to find the match, and in some cases the mismatch. And I think that's when we need the targeted strategies and, you know, the deliberate interventions that really get people on that pathway. And for us at Access, that's looked like a few different kind of pathways. In some cases, it's been social enterprise where it gives a person, you know, access to language development, some on-the-job training, a resume, a reference, through to the more skilled and highly qualified people. And I'd give an example of the ANZ Given the Chance program, which was, you know, a really great program for the people we worked with, but also for ANZ Bank. So essentially it offered entry-level positions into the banking institution. What we did was to find a group of 5 candidates that would be a fit to that role, and it was such a great outcome. Not only did it give people that first entry into their job, but it gave ANZ Bank a pool of candidates that during normal recruitment they would never source. The manager of Townsville ANZ Bank said to me, if we used our usual recruitment, we wouldn't have sourced a pool of people like this. I'm now sitting here with 5 people struggling to understand which one will I recruit. And that's a great problem to have. So I guess my challenge is merit-based is fine, and it should be merit-based, but sometimes you have to add a targeted strategy to make sure you are making it inclusive and broad.
Fantastic. Mitra.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am a migrant to this country, so I like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land. I work for an organization that believes what we do and how we create opportunity for people we work with will have impact for all members of the community. And in particular, as we talk about diversity, I think it's important to acknowledge those that have been before us. There are many work programs that we work as an organization. We work with about 5,700 people a year across Queensland. But I just want to talk about one program that Commissioner Rob Stater mentioned, that's Work and Welcome program, which is a very grassroots program. It's a workplace giving program that provides opportunity. And I say that, and I think Tim mentioned that, and Robert mentioned that as well. People do need to have that opportunity. When I was a young case manager, if someone would tell me, I want a job, on the first instant you meet, I would say, oh, well, you need to build your social capital and have, like, you know, a job is only one part of your work. And if we have a circle, and I used to think I'm very smart, I think without having one element of that, you would be a flat tire. But I think it's more than that. It's about creating opportunity for people to bring the capacity, competencies that they have. And I want to acknowledge and give a shout out to the Queensland government in particular in championing Work and Welcome. And some of the government departments are here. Queensland Transport and Main Road has been a champion in giving workplace opportunities. It's mainly driven by staff at the workplace, but it's a real job. It's a paid 3 months job opportunity. And Queensland Transport started with 1 placement, extended that to 12, and there have been amazing job outcomes. There are many other government departments. Currently, we have about 32 schools as a part of that, number of private organizations, and a major bank that has been involved into recruitment. We'll talk to you more about that. However, I have a brochure out there.
Thank you.
Please take one. What Work and Welcome does, it creates opportunity to have conversation at the workplace. It makes diversity real. A workplace of 30 staffs, it takes about 50 weeks to collect enough money to have a placement. But what it does, people become champion, and people start to having conversation about why we need to do that, what that adds to our workplace.
Michael.
My name is Michael Combs. I'm the founder and CEO of Career Seekers. I'm also the founder and CEO of Career Trackers. I also am a migrant to Australia and now a proud Australian. I started Career Trackers with the idea of getting Indigenous Australians into professional roles and into the private sector. 8 years ago, that was an idea. The summer that's just gone past, we've put over 3,482, to be exact, Indigenous young people into professional jobs. That is a model of employment that we know works. And how do we know it works is because it's based off of a model that comes from the United States that's been doing it for 38 years. And for me, the interest is, can we take that model and make it relevant to other pockets of the community? We've taken that model, we transported it to New Zealand, and it's now creating jobs for Maori and Pacifica in New Zealand. 2 years ago, it was the idea of, can we take this model and make it relevant to humanitarian arrivals in Australia and refugees? And in 2 years, we've put just under 400 humanitarian arrivals and refugees into professional jobs. And the idea and the fundamental premise behind this program is reconnecting people to the careers that they had in their home country. So very much a like-for-like career for people who want to continue that career, but also for a lot of people the opportunity to expand and explore other careers. In building on the success that we've had with our Indigenous program, we work with 108 different companies. In 2 years, we've been able to convert 43 of those companies into now looking at the employment of a whole different aspect of diversity, and it's working. The idea of the program is that individuals do 12 weeks of paid work, that at the end of 12 weeks, what we've seen is 80% of them are converting into ongoing positions. But for the ones who don't, we've taken the 3 biggest barriers that they face off the table. We've given them an Australian company on their CV, we've given them local experience and a local reference, and we've put them into a network of like-minded professionals who are then helping them open up their networks, and we're speeding up the settlement process. What we're seeing is, individuals who are on a New Start allowance of $400, 12 weeks later they're going into a job earning $80,000 or $90,000. And that's the impact that we know that the model can have, and I congratulate the Queensland government for taking this bold step, because as Tim said, we have an opportunity to teach Europe. We have an opportunity as Australians to get this right and actually teach the world and export some of our IP. So congratulations to Queensland, and I'm incredibly excited and honoured to be here and to sit on the panel. Thanks.
Thanks. Deserves a clap, yes. Well done.
My name is Nirari. I'm a refugee by myself, came in Australia in 2015 as a refugee from Syria. And as any refugee, and most of the refugees organization, they know about these barriers. Whether anyone newly arrives to Australia, they face the same barriers of lack of professional network, and local experience, local qualifications. So I thought about the idea to create some sort of social enterprise, but also relying on technology, because by myself I have the IT background. So I thought about the idea of relying on technology, using technology, and combine technology with the social work, with the working with refugees and social work, support them one-to-one. So combine both models together, working one-to-one with the refugees, and also provide technology tool for the business to make this data available for the business across the nation. So the business here in Brisbane, they can search and recruit someone in New South Wales, in Victoria, and everywhere. So by combining both of them, we start Refugee Talent as social enterprise and online platform. We deliver a recruitment solution for the business, and also we are a social enterprise. We're supporting refugees by helping them with a professional network, with how to prepare themselves for interview, for resume, professional networks for them. And also we have great success in Australia with this model, with combine both of them together as social work and technology. We applied the same system we applied even overseas. And now we are working with some of partner organizations in Asia, in New Zealand, and recently we are start working with other partners in camps in Lebanon and Syria, in Lebanon and Jordan. And we have the first 8 big Australian corporates. They are now recruiting overseas from the camps to Australia based on their skills, not on the humanitarian visa, which is fair. Like anyone can if have any contract. If you are a refugee, this label of refugee shouldn't stop you to get a contract and go to other countries as skilled migration, which is fair, because now it's just 0.1% of the refugee gets resettled by the UNHCR, where there is hundreds of thousands of the migrants. They can freely move to any countries based on their skills. So using technology, we realize that we broke all the barriers, because in computer system or 0 and 1, they don't understand white, they don't understand black, they don't understand color, they don't understand where you came from. It's just technology is make it fast, make it easier for the business to recruit someone domestically and also international. And in 2 years, we have great success. We have now more than 300 companies working with us, including government departments, big corporates, and also small to medium-sized business, and even small shop. They can just go online and find someone, request interview, and place them as full recruitment model, but applied for refugees and migrants with humanitarian support or social support from our side to our candidate. Thanks.
Thanks, Narari. So, ladies and gentlemen, I guess, and I think I can't quite recall, Tim, whether you mentioned this at the beginning of today when we were having coffee before the session started, or during your presentation, but there's a whole range of organisations out there that are looking to recruit a more diverse workforce. Some are more further down the line than others. Some don't know where to start. I think we've got 4 organisations, or representatives from 4 organisations, that can give you a starting point. They've had an opportunity to tell you very briefly about what they do and what they can offer. Here's your opportunity to ask questions of them and help you along your journey. I guess I might direct this at Michael. I think I might start with Michael. Michael, I'm curious, with the experience you've had in the States and in Australia, and the topic of diversity in recruitment has been going for quite a long time now. What do you think the major barriers are to closing some of those gaps that people recognise, people want to close, but for whatever reason they're not closing as fast as some people would hope that they would be closed?
I think we overthink it. We overcomplicate it. You know, at the end of the day, these are just like any other employee that you're going to employ anyway. Now, we've got to tweak some things at the front end to make sure that they get in the door. We've got to do some things to make sure that they settle in. But at the end of the day, we got to get on with it. We can't have strategy after strategy after discussion after discussion. We're never going to perfect it if we don't try. And I think that that's where organizations can sometimes get ahead of themselves, where it's something new. Be willing and tolerant to take a risk, take a calculated risk, because we know that, you know, if we go too hard or too fast, or we don't think some of the things through, yes, it can have a lot of damage, but I think we're never going to know unless we try. And I think that that's what we've seen in the scale of both of these programs, is companies just being willing to have a go at it. And you start small, you have some good successes. And, you know, we've seen, for example, in one of the banks that we work with at Westpac, we said to them, you know, you've got these retail branches and these highly multicultural communities. Do the people working behind the counter look like or speak like the people who are in front of the counter? And why don't we take someone who, you know, speaks a couple of languages, has diversity of thought, can understand that community, let's put them behind the counter and let's see what happens. And in that case, we had one, I'd say, quite brave branch manager. I went to that bank while that intern was starting her internship. And what happened was that people were going into the branch, they were pushing the button, getting their ticket. And if it wasn't her window that got called, they just stood to the side. And she had, you know, the poor woman, she couldn't even go to the bathroom or to lunch because she had her own queue the whole day. But that branch manager very quickly realized that this diversity thing is actually good for business. And what happened was he rang all of his mates, and within the span of 2 weeks, we had 15 tellers working in 15 different Westpac branches in Western Sydney. And I think that that's the power of diversity. It's get on with it, let's try something, build the support network around it. And when we have success, it goes really quickly.
Start somewhere, get on with it. Excellent, excellent. Questions? Got a lady down here. In the middle of the room here. And when you ask a question, if you could let us know who you're directing it towards, that would be most helpful. Gives them a chance to think about what they're going to say.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks to the panel, really inspiring, amazing hearing from all of you. I just wanted to thank Mitra too for the shout out to Transport and Main Roads, which is where I'm from, and I've had some experience with the Work and Welcome program, which I think is excellent. A question for any panel member is, and I think it was touched on in the opening comments, was about the recognition of skills from other countries. And I've had the experience of actually working alongside people who have come from other countries, incredibly well qualified, who then have to start their careers all over again because their skills or their qualifications aren't recognised in Australia. I'm just really interested in your thoughts around where that's going in terms of, or it as a genuine barrier. What are the steps to actually address it? Do you think there's progress being made in this area?
I might, in the interest of continuing the mutual shout-out going on here, I might direct that to Mitra.
That's a very good question and very good point. I think skill recognition is definitely a challenge, in particular in highly professionalized sector, in particular medical field. I was talking to an engineer yesterday and I said, sometimes medical practitioners go through university longer than engineers, and it's sometimes easier for engineers to go through the process, not as easy as it should be. So a skill recognition is definitely a challenge. In the sense of progress, I think programs that we all talked about provides an opportunity for people to give a chance to compare their experience and skills with the workplace they are engaged with. And Work and Welcome has been through working with the employers, has been about right match, right fit, not only from qualification, but also culture of organization in the sense of reciprocity. So I think we have a long way to go. There is a lot of work happening, and I think Queensland government is leading the work on that. I think we still need to work collectively, and I think in this room, the thinkers around this room, collectively we can work together in identifying and recognizing what people bring, because that's the social capital. Michael mentioned about value that people add if they have access to professional employment. So the return to the community is great. We talk about learn, earn, and belong, but I think contribute is a very important element of the whole process. I don't think I directly answered, because I really think we have a long way to go to have a smooth skill recognition. In recognition of that, federal government has funded some pilot program of looking at the pathway for skill recognition. And even with that, that's really complex to try to help people. I think people don't know what pathway to take. And having a sort of simplified information would be, I think, a very easy process maybe, and make it possible for people.
Gail, want to add something?
Yeah, I think one of the things is a natural network, and some of the professional bodies as well, and there is professional bias. A lot of the barriers actually come from those in associations and professional bodies who really see what they think is the next tranche of workers to come through. So I think the natural networks, and often that is through those work placements, even if it's not particularly in your skill set, your professional qualification, at least to be exposed in the industry, and at least develop some language content, some networks that you can tap into, even a mentor or a buddy. Often it's the person who invests in you, and because you've impressed them, they'll put their hand out and they'll try and help you. And I think that's naturally what would happen for my kids. You know, it would be who they played footy with or where they went to gymnastics, and you kind of build this network around. And I think when you're new to a country, you're navigating those networks, and it's often the personal and the professional networks that really make a difference. And it's costly. So I think at least to be exposed and having some exposure to the professional language and the kind of networks that you're going to be linking in with.
Take another question. Down here in the middle of the room.
Hello. Just a question. I don't really know who to actually appoint it to, but as a migrant or someone who just got here, for instance, how would you approach sort of the language barrier? So one of the qualifications is obviously, especially for customer service, is English. So most people do speak English here. How would you approach, I suppose, having someone who really wants to be in a professional, maybe an adult or a younger person who knows almost nothing in regards to English? How would you approach that?
I'm going to take a punt here, and feel free to punt it back. But Narari, would you be happy to respond to that?
So just one example, we have one of our business client who have two of the best data scientists in all his business, and both of them, they can't speak English at all. So there is some professional jobs who require skills more than communications. So for those jobs, anyone, even if you can't speak English, you will be able to work in those places. For other positions, like for example customer service, some admin assistant roles are required to answer some emails, to archive, or to write a report. For those type of roles, it's very hard for someone who's newly arrived to Australia or he can't speak English. But there is a place for someone also who can't speak English at all if he has the right skills or he's professional in his industry. So there is a place for that person to work in Australia. And also I have to mention that settlement service in Australia is one of the best countries in the settlement service. So they are really looking for the settlement, they are really care about the settlement service. The English education is delivered by Navitas or other institute. I think it's a great program and have really great impact at helping these people to really access employment.
Thank you. Other questions? I'm just trying to, I've been in the middle of the room. If it's okay, I'll come back to you, sir, and I'll go across to this side of the room, and then I'll come to the middle, and I'm just checking if anybody's got a question on that side, let me know, and we'll make sure we get there.
Thanks for your insights into diversity in the workplace. The previous speaker, Robert, mentioned the target for the state government around 10% of diversity in the public sector, Queensland public sector. I was wondering just from each of you what some of the ideas you would have or advise to the government in terms of achieving that target over the next few years.
Gail.
I think targeted recruitment strategies. You know, just to put an ad out and advertise and recruit in the normal way is not going to attract the candidates that you need. And I guess that's why I gave the example of what ANZ Bank's Given the Chance program is. It really allows, you know, agencies like MDA or Access or others who actually have access to a pool of candidates where we know that people sit with all these qualifications and skills, to really source that pool, that talent, and to put people together as potential candidates for jobs. So these are often people that would never reach that job unless you had a targeted strategy. And I think, you know, there is the issue of bias, subconscious, unconscious bias, where a name on a resume, they can be detriments. So, you know, I think the more that it's a personalised approach and that it's targeted and you source a variety of recruitment strategies and measures, that's how you're going to really source a broader pool of candidates that might otherwise be missed in your normal recruitment strategies.
Just add a point there. I think that's a really good question. Recruitment processes are usually delivered within a cultural context that on its own creates barriers in participation. Programs like, you know, every program that we mentioned, of course, I'm familiar with the work and welcome, and the Commissioner spoke about the mentorship program and traineeship that they are putting at the Public Service Commission. provides opportunity for people to have a platform, to not have that immediate barrier. So I think we need to look at our recruitment processes, our engagement. We judge, I think, like, you know, I say that, I don't say it anymore. I think, like, you know, I've been here long enough to just, like, you know, not have those challenges. People speak with accent, but don't think with accent. People bring, I think our colleague from transport said that, people bring their worldviews. It's a diversity of thought. So we need to allow for that. And I think it's, if I may add, our data is very similar. 12 weeks paid employment, ours shows 78% employment success. Most workplaces say, actually, we don't have a job ongoing. What we learn is if they don't, they find a job for the person because they have got to know. So I think part of the maybe Queensland government strategies to look at the recruitment policies. How do we engage people to give that first opportunity? You mentioned first chance. And how to sort of like allow people to bring their social capital, their experience, their aspiration to the workplace.
Okay. The gentleman down in the middle here, and then I'll come across, maybe on that side. If not, I'll come across to the gentleman here.
Thank you, Pano. My name is Sibo Sengawa. I'm from Townsville, and I work with refugees and migrants. And my question is, I have got two questions. The first question is for Nirari, refugee talent. So I'm curious to know, how does your program works for people who live in refugee camps? Does UNHCR get involved once you connect people to employers? Or and the other thing is, because actually we receive refugees from Africa, so I was wondering if it's something probably you think to may work in other parts of the world. I know you work with the people from Jordan. So I'm wondering if it's something we can learn about and maybe try to pass on information to other people who live in other parts of the world. And the second question is about skills recognition. Myself, when I migrated to Australia, the process seemed very complicated, and actually myself, I migrated from speaking country, English-speaking country, United States, and when I was trying to get my skills recognized, and the process seemed very complicated, and I actually gave up to do that. Is there any way, simple process probably for everyone in the panel, which that is easier to follow in order to get the skills recognized? I know that doctors, usually it's easier for them, usually they do exam and whatever, but other careers, it's very complicated.
So two questions there. We'll start with Nirari, and I don't know whether we can add more to the second question about skills, but we might. I'll see if there are any comments for any members of the panel. I know that's a recurring conversation that seems to go around and around and around. It's one of those tough nuts, but I would be interested to see if the panel have anything else to add. But Nirari, in terms of broadening the sort of programs that you're involved in to places like Africa and elsewhere.
So just to give you an history or the history of this project. So the UNHCR, 20 years, they was talking about there is 65 million displaced people in the world, and really humanitarian visa is only 0.5% of total population of displaced people. So they was talking about creating alternative pathways, doing something to help those people, and no one took action until there is organization based in USA. They named it Talent Beyond Boundaries. They took the action and they formed a team and they went to the camps to Jordan and Lebanon. So they created a global database which contain all the information from the refugees according to their experience, skills, education, everything. And they have a partnership with the UNHCR. So they are allowed by UNHCR to go to the camps and collect all this data and build all this global catalog. It's just pilot program, and they start in Lebanon and Jordan. So if this program is success, they will apply the same model everywhere, even in Africa or everywhere. So now it's just a pilot program in Lebanon and Jordan. And the idea was how we can create global catalog and link this catalog with other recruitment agencies in the world and make this data available for the business. So the private sector can take action and also hire from camps and help these people to go out of the camps and and the life is living there is so bad, so terrible. Like really, nobody wish to have the same experience. So the first pilot, they worked with us, so we linked our system with their global catalog. And we have our business client here in Australia. We went to all our business clients with Talent Beyond Boundaries, and we met with them. We approached them. We are speaking with them about our program, and we have now 8 big corporates in Australia. They agreed to go with us and to hire from overseas. So the process is they split the business, identify the rules, and they go to our system and search by skills. They find candidates and request interview. These requests go to the camps and they organize online interview and also skills validation test online. And if everything is great, we have our partner, also migration agencies. They will look after the visa. And Australian government recently they announced 1,000 visa to the business, 1,000 visa where the business can sponsor refugees from overseas. So it's based on CSR visa, Community Support Program, CSP, Community Support Program. But this time the business will be the sponsor, not the family or someone else, relative in Australia. So this opportunity allowed us to open the legal way for refugees to come from the camps to Australia. And we are now just working, our target is 10 placement. If we achieve 10 placement and we finish this target, a successful program, we could apply the same model everywhere, and we help refugees in everywhere, in any camps, and make this data available for the business. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I was going to. Oh, good thinking. I was coming to you.
I was sort of sitting here upset that I didn't have a crack at it the first time, so thanks for giving me the chance. Earlier this week, I had a coffee with the former Chief Technology Officer of Atlassian. And I was talking to him about, hiring an IT person, blah, blah, blah. And he said that they no longer want people with university degrees. Think about that. They don't want people with university degrees. And when it comes to this idea of skills recognition, when I came from the United States to Australia, they wanted to recognize my bachelor degree of finance and marketing. For what? Right? Why? And what we're working out in this model, and I think the real question is who's best to recognize qualifications? Is it an institution, i.e. Engineers Australia or the universities themselves? Is it an institutional approach, which is what we've done forever, which is complicated and nobody knows why we're doing it? Or industry? Can industry tell us if you're an engineer, or if you're a marketer, or if you're an accountant, right? So what we're working out in these 12-week internships, that you're going in as an engineer, and what the traditional process does is it says, can you be a certifying engineer, right? Right up here. If you think about a roads project at Lend-Lease, who signs the construction drawings, right? One person who gets paid a lot of money on the back of all of the other reviews that happen. There's an engineer at this level, at this level, this level, this level. What our institutional approach does is we go right here, wrong. Where in 12 weeks, the industry, Lend-Lease, can tell you you're this level engineer. And either we're going to give you a job at this level of an engineer, or when you go apply for a job, don't apply for this level, apply for this level. And when you get through the interview process, tell them to ring me, and I'll certify that you're an engineer at this level. And I think that we've got to ask ourselves these much bigger questions about the relevance of this institutional approach to skills recognition, and what are barriers and what aren't barriers. Sure, if you want to be a doctor, fine. If you want to be a pilot, I can understand. If you're an accountant, a debit and a credit works the same in Syria as it does in Australia. Yeah, I mean, there's some nuances behind it. I don't mean to trivialize or oversimplify, but I think that we can get away from those traditional norms, but it's going to take us leadership. And if we could get something like Queensland government taking leadership position on some of these ideas and notions and helping NGOs work it out and work it out on scale, I think this is the missing piece when we talk about what's happening globally and how do we deal with the big numbers. Australia has an opportunity in that we're dealing with small numbers. and we can work it out here, and we can gift this to the rest of the world. So that's my opinion on skills.
We had a question on this side of the room. I think the gentleman over here.
Hi there. This is, I guess, directed towards all of you. I just wonder what your involvement is or has been with education departments, schools in particular. Like, what things are you doing, and is there anything that we could be doing in our lines of work to sort of help raise awareness of these programs available to students graduating school? Thanks.
I'm wondering, Gail, if you'd be able to answer that. I know you do some great work down at places like Maple Park and so forth, but yeah. I think it might be on.
Yeah, thank you. So we, with the Scanlon Foundation, have funding that's been matched with by DSS for community hubs in schools. There's 6 in Logan and 5 in Ipswich. They're primarily aimed at primary-aged kids in schools, and specifically focusing women who are often left behind in the experience. You know, if there's a husband or a partner, they tend to be on the pathway to work more quickly. Language becomes the priority for them, whereas women tend to often have some of the caregiving responsibilities and can lose their participation in English, training, jobs, you know, their pathways in general. So the community hubs in schools have been a really good project, and each of those hubs have about 27 to 40 partnerships around each of them. And some of the hubs have developed things like, one of the hubs bought a coffee machine. Some of the women wanted to be baristas. You know, so there's been a whole lot of innovation and keeping women particularly on that pathway to employment, education, training, language development. In the high school setting, we have some what we call My Zones, and it's where you know, we have a worker that goes into the school and works alongside the principals and the schools, and it's really about working with the kids because a lot of the pathways might not be the traditional academic trajectory. You know, for instance, one of our high schools has set up a health hub with the growing kind of need for jobs in the health sector and the community services sector. He's preparing their children, their young people, for potential jobs in the health sector. So they've built this health hub and technology. They're, you know, developing drones and so on. So the schools, I think, are recognising, especially if they're dealing with kids with diversity, that the pathways, the traditional pathways, are equally not going to work in the same way. Doesn't mean the kids aren't smart and don't have future and don't have a lot to contribute, but what they need, again, it's about that targeted approach. What they need is a different experience, different levels of support. So I think it's about finding out, you know, going into the schools, working with the principals, working alongside of these kind of hubs to see where an investment in future job creation is, that language development, mentors, those champions. I mean, they're all the same kind of initiatives that can be targeted to those kids in schools and working with the schools. And, you know, we had a CHAPS meeting this morning, Community Hubs and Partnerships meeting this morning, you know, talking about the very central role that schools play. And often that is the touch point for families. The way they engage with the system, especially if they've been disengaged, is through a school environment. So, you know, the role of education, but the role of place is really important in terms of building pathways and co-investment, co-funding, and those collaborative sort of partnerships and leveraging off a range of resources to support that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a sign of a great conversation is one where, you know, you just don't want it to end. I could see some people going to raise their hands there, but we actually have run out of time. There's obviously lots to talk about in this space, and we have a panel here that's available to you, not just after today, straight after today's session, Rod. I'm sure beyond today's session that would be very happy to get your contact details or provide theirs, and you can follow them up. Can you please thank our panel? Thanks, Rod.
Thanks, Rod.